Hey guys, it's a sleepy vlog. Sleepy reader on the mic. I haven't done a sleepy vlog in a while. I've been wanting to, and it just keeps slipping by me. So many subjects I want to talk about, I guess. All trivia. This is comic books. It's just fun. I've been really feeling the community, the YouTube comic book community has felt particularly strong for me personally. I've been on for 2 3/4 years, and it kind of ebbs and flows how much you're feeling it, I think. But it's felt really good and really solid for me. Got some old friends, some new friends, some new acquaintances, old acquaintances. We talk about stuff that's trivial. It's comic books. If comic books went away tomorrow, I'd be sad, but my basic life would go on. But we talk about them as if they're really important. And I think just having something that you have a really strong interest in, and lots of people to talk about it, is powerful and feels really personal, even though it's not life and death. Far from life and death. We're getting all upset, say, over the new Batgirl. All things come and go in life, and there will be another new Batgirl someday. But it's fun to get all upset about it and to dig into it. And there's an emotional reality to talking about trivia. I mean, in a way, there's less emotional reality that if we were talking about politics or something. I feel that in a way that would be further away for most of us, from our true selves. And some people, their hobby is politics, I guess. Then that might be different. So yeah, been totally thrilled by the community crossover. Great stuff. We'll be having a hangout Saturday. At least 2 people will be there, plus me. Hopefully more, 3 people maybe, 4. And maybe we'll do another one if people still want to do it about Superman and whatever else that leads to. If people are watching live, it would be great if they left questions. I've been watching a lot of newer people, and so I wanted to mention some of them. And I'll try to do these sleepy vlogs more often and shout out more people. I don't want to do an endless shout out here, so let me just talk about a few people. There is Bear 90X, I think young guy over in Europe. And I can't remember what country. Some northern European country. Next time I watch his videos, I will note it more carefully. And I'll put links down below, of course, when I get the chance. And Bear shows a lot of graphic novels and some other stuff that he's collecting. And you get kind of a sense of what is available over in Europe. He showed a really interesting Jack Kirby European collection, and other stuff like that. And he gets some English language comics and some translations and other stuff. So he's a really interesting new YouTuber. There's Collector of Stuff, who is, as the title implies, comic books are just a part of what he talks about. I've listened to a lot of his comic book videos, watched a lot of comic book videos, and some of the other stuff. He did one on Hot Wheels that interested me quite a bit. There is comic book Aesthete, who I believe, like myself, is an older father. And he has a lot of interesting comments and shows interesting books. There is T-Rex, a woman from Australia. Yeah. And she reads all kinds of interesting books, and I feel like she and I already had a few interesting conversations, like about Herb Trimp and about G.I. Joes and Transformers and stuff. The G.I. Joe versus Transformers series. Another person to keep your eye on is Derrick Lucarelli, who is... his biggest focus is Batman, and he does very long videos where he discusses every aspect of a lot of the latest Batman books. But he's also covered other things like witches, and I expect we'll see him expanding outward from there. Tylox, themighty, just a really nice guy who talks about the comics he's reading lately. I really like him. He's got a contest going, or is the contest already over? I'm not sure. Contests are another thing I'll mention in a minute. There is GENOthaDRAGON. I might have mentioned him once before. He's done some cool videos where he shows different comic book shops he goes to. Plus, he's done some interesting vlogs and does the hauls like we all do that are interesting. And he kind of got a good start and then wasn't doing videos for a while, but now he's doing videos again. We've also got AlliReadsBooks, who I think she started her channel as more of a booktuber, but she clearly reads a lot of comics and graphic novels and talks about them a lot, and it's very interesting. She's still exploring and asking for advice and stuff, but I really like her videos. And I think a lot of other people in the community have been commenting on her videos that I've seen. Let's see. I thought I had more people on my little list here. You know, it's a notes thing on Chrome. So I made the notes at work and then I read them at home, but only some of the notes have showed up. So I guess the last person I'll mention is Don Comic Book Junkie. And I think he really is a serious comic book junkie. I really enjoyed some of his room tour type of videos and some of his discussion of his collecting strategies and stuff, like buying 20 copies of Outcast #1. Anyway, so yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that for now. The main part of what I wanted to do with this vlog, although I've already babbled on for over nearly 8 minutes, is answer a lot of questions from contests. So there's a lot of contests and other things, and I've entered more recently than I usually do, maybe because of feeling the community. And it's definitely one of the things people do as a community thing. Throw little contests, ask questions, or ask people to do videos. I generally don't want to win more things. In the first 2 months when I first started in the community, I entered a whole bunch of contests and I won 2 of them. I got a whole huge box of comic books and some toys and all sorts of great stuff from a comic book mom. And then I won a bunch of stuff from Phil Cummings. And I realized I already don't have time to read all the comic books I own, and that I keep buying more. And I kind of slowly slowed down on my contests. And now a lot of, especially the newer people, they do contests for their first 50 videos and their first 50 subscribers and their first 100 subscribers and that kind of thing. It's totally understandable. But it's just hard always to keep up. And to remember all the questions and things like that. And sometimes they're questions you've answered a lot before. But one of my favorites on YouTube is Comic Crack, and he did one, I think, for being on for 2 years, which is quite an accomplishment. And he's a great guy and always interesting and always unique. And I felt really bad that I thought I was going to enter his thing, and I missed the deadline entirely. So I want to answer his questions and some other people's questions that they have thrown out there. And I kind of enjoy hearing other people answer questions. So these aren't entries to their contests. Most of these contests are up. But so Terrence asked to talk about a music album, a movie, and a comic book that were really important to you. And these are the kinds of things that are really hard to pin down one thing, but people always ask. So music has been really important to me. Excuse me. Over my lifetime. It's helped me through a lot of times and been part of who I am. And I'm always been exploring music and going to lots of concerts, buying lots of albums. When I was younger, I had lots of people to talk about music with. It seems to be going through a period of life where there's less of that. And parenthood has cut out a lot of music from my life, sadly. I won't go into that any further, but I should have just picked one album, but I picked a bunch, Terrence. Aerosmith's Toys in the Attic. It just, maybe all of rock and roll is like this, but this really, at the time that I got into it, 1976, 77, it just seemed like another world, a world so separate from my parents. And a world I wanted to be a part of, but didn't quite know what that world was. And then kind of on a different note, a year or two later, I discovered Rush 2112, which is, this epic science fiction concept album. And this was a different thing because my peers in high school did not know about Rush. I was the first one to discover it. It was not played on the radio. It was this odd cult thing, and it tied into my love of science fiction. And so it felt like I was the only one who knew about this album. So that was an early experience of that kind of thing. And then I knew I wasn't the only one who loved the Ramones because I discovered them through rock and roll journalism. People were writing them up all the time, but they were not played on the radio, and other kids in high school did not know about them at the time. And I got several of their albums, but this one, Ramones Leave Home, somehow was the one that super clicked with me, and not only clicked in the way that rock and roll always clicked, but as avant-garde art to me at the time, if you will, with the minimalism and the uncompromisingness of it compared to everything else at the time. So that was really powerful to me, Terrence. And then I discovered blues really through George Thorogood. But this Hound Dog Taylor and the House Rockers was the first album where I felt that I'd gone deep into the blues. I'd gone deep into something else special and different and its own thing, and separate from what other people knew about. Although I think a lot of music nerds were discovering Hound Dog Taylor at the time because George Thorogood had mentioned him a number of times. And then another kind of discovery was King Sunny Ade, which was the first African album I ever got. This album's called Aurora, and I believe this is the first one I got. Aura? Not Aurora. Aura? I don't know. He is the most famous Nigerian musician, even back in the early 80s when I got this album. And I was born in Nigeria, but I knew nothing about Nigeria. I was born there. My family left there when I was 9 months old, and I've never been back. I should go back. I hear it's a horrible place, but it has great music. But this was just the beginning. I've become an enormous world music fan, particularly African music from Nigeria and all over Africa. So, yeah, those are some albums that were really important to me. He asked about a movie that's really important to you, and I think he expected people to hold up DVDs. I don't think I own DVDs of the movies that are most important to me, and I wasn't really sure what to pick. But my first thought was Planet of the Apes, but my second thought is El Bruto by, oh God, now I've gone blank on his name. The famous Spanish director. Well, when I was in college, probably VCRs had just started to appear, but still the main way you saw movies was you went to the movie theater. And in typical college movie theater fashion, they had a movie every night in the college movie theater, a different movie every night. And a lot of them were European, a lot of them were art movies, and a lot of them were old movies. And to me, I think movies are an experience. I don't think of them as something I collect. I think I still, even though I watch things on DVD much more than I go to the movie theater now, I still think of them as this fleeting experience that you collect. Kind of like music. I collect, more than collecting albums, I collect music experiences, concerts I've been to. And so Buñuel, that's the director, Buñuel. At one point, I was a member of the film club, and every Monday night they would, you paid for the semester or whatever, and every Monday night they would show famous, but to us, very obscure movies. And a lot of them at some point were Buñuel movies, and I just fell in love with Buñuel movies. And it's kind of funny that I don't own any on DVD. I should. But I just think of these things as fleeting. And so one of the more obscure Buñuel movies that always stuck in my head was called El Bruto. And it was about a brutal man and the marriage he was in and it was a Mexican movie. Buñuel has Spanish, French, and Mexican periods of his career. And Buñuel's really famous for film surrealism, but the surrealism was more in the characterization somehow. And I can't tell you why that movie's so stuck in my head, because all the Buñuel movies stuck in my head. Anyway, and then he asks you to talk about a comic book that really meant a lot to you, and I've been doing that for 350 videos. But something I haven't talked about, and that was really important to me in the early 90s, and maybe kept me feeling a part of comic books as a maturing, pretentious adult. So I think Terrence will understand. This is Taboo, which was a comic book that was published by Rick Vetch, I believe. Was it Rick Vetch or someone else involved in the Swamp Thing? I assumed that, they were making pretty good money at that time, and so the artists themselves and writers decided to do stuff where they didn't make money. So you've got Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman in here. I mean, they weren't as well, particularly Neil Gaiman wasn't as big then as he is now. This is from 1992. So it was a nice antidote to the Todd McFarlaneization of comic books at the time. And so the people from the mainstream, like Moore and Neil Gaiman, who were interested in other things, mingled with, some real. This is the Neil Gaiman one, I think. I think it has Neil Gaiman as a character in it, which I now kind of go that figures. But this idea of these people from the mainstream mixing with the people from the underground was very cool to me. I think I don't think Charles Burns is in this issue, but Charles Burns was in it a lot, and I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on all the people. So it had a lot of sort of pushing the boundaries, horror / underground comic stuff. This is where From Hell first appeared by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell. I better not show that. But oh yeah, I better not show that. Yeah, so if you haven't heard of this series, Terrence, I definitely think you should keep an eye open for it, because it would be your kind of thing. But this is one of the things I'm really sad. I don't think this is the only issue of it I had. I think I had all the issues that ever came out, and then I gave them away to one of our babysitters, who I thought, I'll give her the cool comics that I can't enjoy anymore. So there's that. Okay, this is going to be a long video, because Reader 1717, quite a while ago now, had her own celebration of a landmark, and wanting to give back. I think she entered all her subscribers in a raffle, but she also asked people to make videos about other things they collect. And I've mentioned collecting experience. And I really wanted to enter Reader 1717's, do a video for her, and time just got away from me again. And so she wanted people to talk about other things they collect. I mentioned I kind of collect experiences of music. I also am a big written science fiction collector, and my collecting there has several different angles. For instance, over the years, I've collected a lot of older science fiction magazines. Let's see, what else have I got? I know I dragged out a pile here. I never really, until this YouTube thing, I never thought about myself as a collector. But I was accumulating and enjoying when I could find these old science fiction magazines. And mostly I was picking these up before the internet became such a big place for shopping. So if I went back to this now, I imagine I could find a lot more stuff. It was just whenever I stumbled across it at a used bookstore. But I'm really into the history of science fiction, and I could do endless videos about that if I wanted. Because another thing that I kind of collect, because they're kind of obscure, is books about the history or scholarship about science fiction. I'm a huge fan of Frank Herbert's Dune, and so I used to have hanging on my wall the original magazines where the first Dune serializations of the novels appeared. Before, I think it took 2 or 3 years after they appeared in analog for them to appear in hardback books, because it was really hard for Frank Herbert to find a publisher other than this magazine Analog. And so I used to have these hanging on my walls in these cheap plastic frames. I think I have a few more, but these are the 2 I could turn up right away. So yeah, I think that Dune was split into 3 books, just the original Dune book, into 3 books that were serialized in analog, but they were really all one book. And So another part of my science fiction collecting was finding more obscure, stranger publications, like this Atrocity Exhibition, this version of the Atrocity Exhibition by J.G. Ballard, which is infamous for having the story called Why I Want to, pardon my French, Why I Want to Fuck Ronald Reagan, which when it was originally published in the United States, like a senator or a congressman was touring the printing plant, something like that, when they were printing it, and he picked up a piece of paper and it said, Why I Want to Fuck Ronald Reagan, and they trashed the entire book, and so then it wasn't published in the United States for a long time. I'm sure I've mangled that story, but you get the idea. Another angle of my, so I have tons of, paperback science fiction books, just normal commercial books. I love the junkiest science fiction. I love the most highbrow science fiction. But at times I was collecting a lot of small press, which include a lot of short story collections and some more unusual novels. So these are examples of that. Something like this probably only had 1,000 or 2,000 copies ever printed. But again, I never thought about it as collecting, and I only now consider, what to do to keep them in good shape. Oops, there goes the microphone. So there's a lot of small presses in the science fiction world. This is a very active one, or was a very active one, called Golden Griffin Press. So these ones might have 2,500 copies. Some of the other ones, like this might only have 500 copies printed. I'm not absolutely positive on that. There are also certain authors that I obsessively collected. The biggest one that I can think of at the moment is Charles Bukowski. So I have tons and tons of Charles Bukowski books. This is the first one I ever bought. I think I bought it in 1982 or 81. Not treated well because I've read it a bazillion times. Yeah. I don't even know, it meant a lot to me when I was in my 20s. But I'll still pick up, some book of obscure Charles Bukowski poems. And Charles Bukowski is not very obscure. I understand that, if anyone's saying that. Another part of it is for a long time, I collected tons of these popular science books. I used to. It seems like with the internet, I get more of my science news off the internet, and I don't buy as many of these books, which is kind of sad. And as I mentioned, I also collect a lot of sort of pseudo-scholarly books on science fiction or histories of science fiction. This one's a really great autobiography of Samuel Delany, which has come out in several editions because he keeps changing it. Here's one about a lot about the early science fiction, earlier than most people realize, like Cyrano de Bergerac wrote some science fiction. So anyway, that's some of my other hobbies, some of my other collections. Okay, I got all distracted by that. I've gone on for 30 minutes now, but I'm going to continue. Tylox the Mighty had a contest with questions. I think it might still be going, but I'm not entering. But I'm going to answer his questions. They're one of those ones that are hard to answer or that we've talked about over and over again. Where are my props? He asks, who's your favorite cover art or who's your favorite artist and what's your favorite cover by that artist? Impossible questions. My favorite artists can change all the time. Favorite covers, even more so. But, and to risk kind of being repetitive, one of my favorite cover artists of all time is Neil Adams, but he's a fantastic interior artist too, but he's overall not my favorite artist. So here's the repetitive part. My favorite artist is Jack Kirby, and I can't pick just one favorite cover. I do have one that's like a super favorite cover of his that I couldn't find. I don't know where I put it. It's an early Captain America one where Captain America is fighting Steve Rogers on the cover. But here's a great Commandy cover, a great Demon cover. So Jack Kirby's covers are fantastic, and his interiors are fantastic. I seem to, when I was looking for Jack Kirby stuff, stumbled across a lot of Demon here. Always loved that Commandy cover. And that's also a very cool Demon cover. But, how do you pick the best Jack Kirby cover? At one point, I think on Twitter, I was telling someone, oh, that's my favorite Thor Jack Kirby cover. And then I gave it a second thought and I had already said it, so I left it there. But could have been 12 or 15 different Jack Kirby Thor covers alone could be my favorite cover. Then he asks, who's the worst hero in comic book history, in my opinion? It's funny, the first ones that pop into my mind are ones I think are bad, but I think are good. So and those are E-Man and Plastic Man. They're silly characters, basically. I mean, really, Plastic Man is brilliant, so I shouldn't say that. Who would be my worst hero? I do not like Booster Gold, but maybe I haven't read enough of him to really be fair about that. I might have said Hawkeye before some of the recent Hawkeye series. Worst hero. I might have said Robin at one point. I always thought Robin was really lame. And later on, they gave him a real personality and everything, as people know him now, especially as Nightwing. But, yeah, so I'm going to say the old Robin. Favorite storyline? Well, there's, again, the repetitiveness. It could be the Galactus storyline in the Fantastic Four by Kirby and Lee, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. I kind of love the storyline leading up to it, when the Inhumans first appear and Johnny Storm falls in love with Crystal. So I'll pick that as my favorite storyline. Best worst death in comics. Well, the most effective death has always felt like Gwen Stacy's death to me. The death that's pissed me off the most was Robin's death, Damien's death. Because that was the first time I really connected to the idea of a Robin because of the father-son dynamic. And to have that go away kind of greatly hurt. I mean, it definitely hurt Damien, but it greatly hurt Batman in my mind. Batman was a much richer character for having Damien. And so I was really pissed at that death. Favorite group in comic book history would have to be the Fantastic Four. It's just such a great mix of characters, with Sue Storm being underutilized, but potentially a great character also. Okay, then Running with Comics had a bunch of Halloween-related questions for his 700th subscriber. So what is your favorite? I didn't pre-read these and think about them. What or who is your favorite horror genre monster? Probably Dracula. Maybe more for his appearances in books and comic books than movies, although there have been some good movies. But somehow stands the test of time. What was your favorite Halloween costume from your past? I think he meant from your childhood. I may have written it down wrong. And in my childhood, I didn't have great costumes, I'm afraid to say. But my favorite was going as a pirate as a kid. My favorite costume that I've ever done was when a old girlfriend and me went to a Halloween party as Sid and Nancy back from the grave. So I was Sid Vicious and she was Nancy Spungen, and we dressed as corpses, punk corpses, and that was a lot of fun. What is your favorite horror film or series? Boy, it's so hard to pick, but one that always jumps out in my mind is Near Dark. I think it's called Near Dark. It should be called After Dark, but I think it's called Near Dark, about these vampires in the Heartland who go on kind of a killing spree with a boy that they've kind of picked up and forced to join them. I think it's by the director, Catherine Bigelow. If you could dress up as any villain for Halloween, who would it be? Dr. Doom. If I could pull off some convincing armor. Any hero. If I could pull off the body, Conan. I guess I could get a costume that would give me Conan's body in a loincloth. What is your favorite horror genre? And by Conan, I mean the Conan drawn by John Buscema or by Barry Windsor Smith, not as Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you could dress up as any... what is your favorite horror genre book, comic, or novel? Well, my favorite is not really a novel. It's a collection of short stories by Clive Barker called The Books of Blood. I really loved the first 3 volumes of that. Some of those stories scared the pants off of me, and others were just amazing, fantastical visions. What is your favorite Halloween trick-or-treat candy? When I was a kid, I loved getting those mini Tootsie Rolls. I don't know why that was so exciting. Not sure what my favorite would be right now, because I'm not sure what people give out. I definitely did not like things like candy corn. What would you have written on your tombstone? See you next time around? Or thanks for the memories? I don't know. Okay, I think I have another set of questions here. Okay, Wonky Ninja asked some interesting questions in his contest, and I just answered them in the video below, and I actually won that contest. I don't know what I'm going to win, actually. So he asked 12 questions, and I got them... I got them from a video by Captain Cummings. You know, he posted all the questions. He wrote them down and posted them all. And so I have copied and pasted them, and I will try to answer them again, although I am probably similar but not exactly the same answers that I might have written in Wonky Ninja's comment boxes. Question number 1. If you could choose Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman to be dead and gone tomorrow, who would you pick? I would pick Spider-Man. I loved Spider-Man. He was never my favorite, but I really enjoyed Spider-Man, mostly like in reprints and that were common when I first started reading comics in the Romita Stan Lee years, and I also liked the Steve Ditko years. But I felt like Spider-Man was growing up, and I feel like by now he should be 50 or 60 years old. And so I kind of just want him to be preserved from what... I don't want to kill him off because I don't like him. I just want to kill him off so that he remains pure. I mean, it's really too late for that, but that's who I would choose. Question number 2. What was the first hero you read a book and thought, I want to read the next issue of that book? Well, it was Captain America. Can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was an issue where he fights Batroc the Leaper, who turns out to be stealing children to give to the Stranger. And at the end of the comic book, the Stranger appears. I think it was actually the second comic book I ever bought, and it was a total cliffhanger. My first comic book I ever bought was The Avengers, and it was a little bit of a cliffhanger, but it sort of had a sense of wrapping up some threads of the story. But I loved that Captain America issue. It was drawn by Sal Buscema, probably written by Steve Englehart or maybe Jerry Conway. And I just was dying to know what would happen in the next issue. And I conned my parents into giving me a Christmas or birthday present of a subscription to Captain America, but I'd already missed that and several other issues. I think it was only a few years ago that I finally got the next issue where Captain America fights the Stranger to Captain America and the Falcon. And I really liked that team at the time because it was what I started with. So yeah, that really triggered the need to get the next issue, and had me get that subscription where the comics came folded in half in a little brown paper sleeve every month. And next I subscribed to Spider-Man and to Fantastic Four and Thor. I think there was one other that I subscribed to. And these subscriptions were a great way around my parents' supposed rule that I couldn't read any more comic books, because they would give me things, special things for Christmas or my birthday, and then I would be getting them all year long. Question 3 is the Rolling Stones or the Beatles? Most intelligent people, I guess, would say the Beatles. I say the Rolling Stones because they are more rock and roll to me. The Beatles are brilliant songwriters. The Stones are sometimes good songwriters, but they are a rock and roll band, and they just keep doing that. And maybe they're too old and everything, but I just like that idea of the rock and roll band that just does not stop grinding out the dirty, naughty rock and roll. Number 4, is it a villain who makes heroes or heroes makes villains? To me, it's pretty obvious that the villains make the heroes. The best heroes like Spider-Man and Batman have great villains. If you don't have good villains, you're not an interesting superhero. There's other things that make the superhero, but great villains help a lot. Fantastic Four had the first great villain that I know of. There's others came before. First great Marvel villain, Doctor Doom, and they had a whole lot of other ones, which is one reason why I used to love the Fantastic Four so much. Captain America, maybe he needs better villains. Batroc the Leaper. He did have the Red Skull. Who else did Captain America have? Just thinking about the comic books that I really loved, Marvel Comics, as a kid. If you could have a superpower, what would it be and why? My superpower... It's so hard to choose one, but I guess, invulnerability. That way you could be a total badass, and no matter what, you wouldn't get hurt, so you could go act really tough. Face down anybody, because you won't get hurt. I just love that fantasy of just going in everywhere, and I'd solve all crime in the world if I were invulnerable, surely. Godzilla or Mothra? Godzilla. Godzilla is awesome. I would like to see the movie. There was one movie with a robot Godzilla. I want to see that. I've never seen it. I've seen posters of it at a restaurant near my house. What's more important, an inker or a colorist? Well, probably until about the year 2000, or maybe even more recently than that, the inker was way more important. The colors were, there were some very skilled colorists out there, but for the most part, comics were colored in pretty standard way. And the inker, either could ruin a comic book or make it fantastic. I was just discussing with somebody, T-Rex, I think, about Herb Trimpe, and there's some incredible Herb Trimpe comics, particularly the ones inked by Barry Windsor Smith. Barry Windsor Smith inking over Herb Trimpe on Machine Man. Herb Trimpe's a great storyteller, and Barry Windsor Smith just has that incredible ink line, and it's a magical transformation. But right now, there's been this evolution of inkers being more tracers. So they're more kind of technicians and less artists, at least that you can notice. And in just recent years, maybe the past 10 years particularly, colorists are really coming into their own, and a colorist can change my experience of the book. So now colorists are more important than inkers, by far. I just have this Gotham in front of me. That's, this book is relying so much on the color more than anything else. You might argue the colorist is more important than the penciler in this particular case, for good or bad, because I wasn't totally on board with the coloring of Gotham. Of Gotham Academy. It looked pretty. That's kind of a great question. Number 8, red or yellow, which is the best lantern? I love the red lanterns, particularly since Charles Soule's been writing them. Love Guy Gardner as a red lantern, so I'd have to argue the red lanterns. Plus, I relate to anger. I don't relate to fear. Obviously, we all experience fear, but anger is a much more powerful driving force in my life, if you will. Question number 9, writer and artist. A writer or an artist who you don't understand how they get so much work, or why they get any work at all. I think that was the question. Or is it the reverse? Don't understand why they aren't getting more work. I think the original question was... Anyway, I hate to totally diss a writer or an artist, and there's always somebody who likes their work. But I'm always surprised when I see more Scott Lobdell books. I was very surprised when I saw in the New 52 when it started so much Rob Liefeld. But I know he has his following. And, a certain generation of people came up on the comics that he did. And there's, some artists like that for me that other people might hate. So I'm not really sure about that question. And, to tell the truth, I read some Scott Lobdell Superman that was okay. So even that answer is unfair. So I think I'm going to pass on that question. I just can't think of someone. The Joker or Magneto for best villain? That's a tough one. Magneto was a very good villain during a period where the Joker was a very lame villain. But the Joker's become a very good villain, and Magneto, both of them are a bit overused, but Magneto feels super overused. But in his day, Magneto was a great villain, and now he's kind of a great anti-hero from what I hear about the current Magneto book, which I've only read issue 1 of so far. And it was a very good issue. Best female character in the history of comics. Wow. It's got to be one of Will Eisner's female characters in The Spirit. And I'm going to say Silk Satin, but I really should reread all of the best Spirit stories and then decide which one. There's so many good female characters in The Spirit. Granted, there's a lot of sexist cliches that are involved there, but still he imbues them with something that's really cool. I still kind of am waiting for Sue Storm to be a great character, but I feel like she is potentially a great character. There's lots of great female characters, really, but those two just somehow pop into my head. Fight between Gru and Conan. How does it go down and who wins? Well, in the most recent issue of Gru versus Conan, apparently Gru won, but it was told by an unreliable narrator. You got to think. I mean, both of these are characters who never lose, but you got to think that Gru has the luck of the idiot behind him, so he would win. So those were some really cool stories by Wonky Ninja, and at the time that he did the contest, I didn't have time to make a video about it. I would have liked to. So there's that. This may end up being the longest sleepy vlog ever. I hope I can upload it. 50 minutes. So I'm going to cut it off there, and I will talk to y'all very soon. Bye-bye.